example, I'm going to show you how to render holes into a piece of material like this sheet. This is quite often very useful when you have something like a perforated piece of sheet metal that you don't want to actually model all those holes because it's not very efficient. You can do this in the rendering environment using the materials. So let's take this steel here and duplicate it, and so we can edit it. And if you go into the advanced controls, you'll see that there's a couple of things in here that you could use. You can look to my other tutorials about textures and roughness, but one here is the cutout. So if you take a cutout is pretty simple. It's just this black and white picture you see here. And the black parts will just be cut out. They will not be rendered at all. It's not even like there's glass there. There's just nothing there. And if you turn that on and show it over there, you'll see it. But I forgot in this case to scale it properly. So I have to click on that. And you can see that there's a number of options that you have here about an offset and these sort of things like this. And I had to tell it what size this little sample is. And I had used a swatch that was 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters. So I put that in. And as you can see, after you do this, you get something that looks a little bit like a piece of perforated sheet. Now, the way it'll work, because I did it on the entire body, it will also render those holes on the side surfaces, and there's some artifacts in the corners. You can see them a little bit, but this already looks pretty good. I think you can see that this would look quite realistic, especially if you spend a little more time on it. Now, one of the things, a lot of the textures that have this, that Fusion comes delivered with, if you search, for example, in your materials list for holes, you'll see a whole number of these that are actually already delivered like this. I just want to show you how to do this yourself in case you want to do other kinds of holes, other forms. You don't have to make them round. You can make them square. You can make them star-shaped, whatever you like. One of the things you can do is use the bump pattern also. And there's another tutorial that I did describing the use of a height map. And the height map basically shows areas that are black as being lower. And so I had the exact same picture, but it was the holes in this one, the black circles, are just a slight bit larger than the cutouts. Here again, I forgot to scale. And once I scale, you can see that because the holes are a little bit larger in the height map, the black areas are lower than the white areas. And you can see around the edges of the cutouts, there's like a little stamp in there. Now you can do this with a height map, or you could do it with a normal map. Again, see one of my other tutorials about how to do that. The normal map is perhaps a little bit more elegant, but this brings you a long way to sort of getting that stamped look, if you like. And of course, you can play around with it if you like. All right, so you might be wondering how you get these height maps and these cutout maps. I use Photoshop to do it. You don't have to use Photoshop. Anything you can make white and black areas will do. I created a swatch 100 by 100 millimeters in this case, although any size will do. You just have to give it into the Fusion editing box as before. I placed this in the middle, a 5 millimeter black circle. This will be the area that will be cut out. And Photoshop has a nice little filter which allows you to offset this in order to make it tiling. And I'm quite inept as you can see with it, so I sped it up so you wouldn't have to suffer through. But basically it splits that into 4 areas that when I tile them, they will all sort of tile up properly. Now I did this for the hole, and I did this again exactly in the same fashion with a slightly larger hole for the height map, which then makes that little embossed stamped area. Now this is very useful. You can see here that the colors do not only remain in the rendering environment, you also have them in the normal modeling environment, even if it's not photorealistic. The one thing you do have to remember is that they do not show up, however, by default in the drawing. Bringing in a drawing here, I can add a couple of views, and you can see that the standard views, the line views, do not show the holes at all, but your preview does because that's shaded. And in the isometric view that I'm going to create in just a second down here, you can see that if I change the isometric view to be a shaded view, you could then see the holes. Now, this is not the end of the world. You can just get around this. Most of the time in the old days, we didn't actually draft all these holes. We would just put a call out, and we would say this would be perforated sheet with whatever you need. I do hope it helps, and thank you for watching.